And now for the main event. We are so excited to welcome back to our stage Marie-Helene, I can't know why I'm stumbling, excuse me. Marie-Helene Bertino, the author of Beautyland and a 2012 alumna of our Emerging Writer Fellowship program. She'll discuss her short story collection, Exit Zero, with Vinson Cunningham, staff writer and theater critic and author of Great Expectations. Welcome to you both. Hi,
Marie, it's so exciting to be here with you. I cannot tell you the hoops and hollers of your fan. I mean, can you?
Everybody.
Beautiful.
Hi, everyone. It's so nice to see you. It's so nice to see you, Vincent.
So great to see you.
Thank you for doing this with me.
Yes, my pleasure. As I understand it, you're going to read for us before we jump in. So
yes, I will take it away. Did everybody get outside today? It was so beautiful today. Oh my gosh, it was so lovely. I went to the botanical garden. We'll talk about it.
Yes.
So I'm going to read from the short story, Kathleen in Light Colors. Before I knew you, I had a lover I could not feel. I mean this literally. Between Kathleen and me existed an unseen body that moved when we did. Body is the wrong word. The entity was something and nothing, We discovered it the first time we made love, a muted affair. Touching her felt like plunging my hands into water. She said touching me felt like wearing mittens. We tried different times and locations, hoping to outsmart the menstruation, noon, fire escape, vestibule, pool. Still, the divided us, an invisible, obfuscating blanket, a third party. We talked about the as if it were a coworker with baffling motives. Was it my late father continuing what he started in life, punishing my strong will? Kathleen's criminal brother up to tricks. A supernatural ex wishing to exclude us from love's country. She remained friendly with all of hers, and mine were too lazy to bother. I'd read that armpit glands excrete slicks that smell like sourdough during perimenopause. We were both the right age. Or was it extreme dehydration? Besides draining bottles of Malbec every night, we were healthy. The never slacked nor slept. Assigning it human attributes most likely misled our efforts. Neither of us imagined it could have supernatural origin. Kathleen was determined to solve this romantic mystery, but I tired of the talking, content to leave space for the unknown. I considered an alchemy that occurred when we two were together, the way on some neck vetiver smells like rancid apple. Whatever hovers outside our understanding, and whatever hovers outside of that, cool. Stop there.
Beautiful. I can't. You know how sometimes you talk about in this book about how we make plans and God laughs. I had a plan for a first question, but now I have to change it.
Sometimes I have that effect on people.
Well, here it is again. I want to ask about the unsayable. That gesture recurs across these stories. There is often a moment of underlining without text, a sort of emptying out, acknowledgement of something that can't necessarily be pointed to or illustrated or put in words. And I'm always interested in writers that concede that some things can't be said.
That's right.
And I wonder if the story specifically is a vehicle for you to uplift that, if not put it into a sentence, to talk about the unsayable, whether the story does that for you.
This story and the short story form?
The short story itself.
The short story itself.
The capital S short story.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that it is a vessel to reckon with, wrangle, to talk to kind of kneel in front of the ineffable and the unsayable. And so I literally make a space for it in this story, and in the story Exit Zero, there is a supernatural creature who also has a name that is unable to be said. So there's a blank space there. And I thank the blank space in my acknowledgments, because there's always a difference between, and I wonder if you would agree, the thing that you're trying to write and then what ends up happening. And I think that if you do it correctly, you get to some other truth that maybe is not what you were originally intending, but is closer perhaps to the actual thing. And if not, in this collection, I just literally put it on the page.
Yeah, it has always struck me, because of my own deficiencies, my flaws, whatever, that the perfect piece of my writing would be like nothing.
Like a blank page?
Just, you know.
A sound.
A sound.
A sigh.
This book is being released on the heels of a great success, your novel, Beautyland. You can give it up for Beautyland. You're allowed to give it up whenever you want. I did wonder, you know, obviously that's like I imagine such a concussive pattern in your life, but I do want to understand for you the maybe different time signatures of different kinds of work, how the story fits into your life, such that like a publication date can't really even gesture toward how it fits into your life, the writing of these stories. How did they, like, over what span of time did these stories come into being, and how did they sort of pattern themselves over those years?
I love the word concussive, and I love the word time signature so much. And I think that is exactly right. How do you talk about the work that comes out of years and years and years of thinking and having your mind changed and having important conversations that lead you to different directions? The stories took about 12 years, and I was writing them while I was writing the last 3 novels. And it's awfully fun if you're a novel writer, or if you're trying to do the impossible thing, which is writing a novel, to take a break and work on something else. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I worked on were these stories. And so I think I can tell who I was reading when I wrote certain stories. I discovered Yoko Ogawa in these years. Uh-huh. And I think her time signature is somewhere in here. And yeah, but it all imprints somewhere.
I am so mystified by this, aspect of my own writing practice, that I always want to know how it works for other people. Mm-hmm. How does influence operate for you? How can you track the evidence of that reading in your own writing?
It's a little mystical, I suppose. But I think that one thing Yoko Ogawa did that kind of called my name a little bit was that she presents normally women on the outskirts of society who are very unapologetic about being on the outskirts of society, so that the story itself is not about being on the edge of society, but just what they do while they're there. Mm. And that is an important shift, so that the story can concern itself with the idiosyncrasies of a life like that. And I think I stopped apologizing for myself, and so did my characters in a certain way. I mean, can I ask you, like, is there an influence that you're thinking about now that you're tracing in your work, or did Great Expectations have an influence that you can see baldly in the text?
Many. And I guess I ask this question of other people because it always seems to me when I read my work that the collage of it is so clear. Mm-hmm. I think so much about the narration of Henry James, such that I recently was reading The Ambassadors and was like, oh, am I just doing Henry? Like, what have I been doing?
What is it about Henry James that you like? When I think of Henry James, I think chatty. Like a chatty uncle.
Yeah, I think it's chat, it's gossip, and it's excruciating control, like on the level of phrases. And there are often, I don't know, moments where it's like, oh, I'm gonna stop and look at my watch so that I can prolong this moment of pleasure or whatever. That seems to be totally about his sort of insane love of like the momentary. That, I don't know. Speaking of phrases, can I ask a question about phrases, sentences, units of language?
Of course.
I want to know whether sometimes these stories are crafted, because sometimes they do. Sometimes they seem like crowns just like gilded and put together just to put on the head of a beautiful sentence. Can I read you some of your sentences?
Yes.
Okay.
I have waited my whole life to hear Vincent say this.
Well, here you go. First of all, I want to say that I suspect that poetry has something to do with this, because here's a beautiful line of iambic pentameter. A numbness in her forehead framed in pain.
Dun 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 dun.
Yeah,
That's right.
but not as rigid as, just like, here's another one from the same story, which I'd like to talk about. It's called Viola in Midwinter.
Let's do it.
About I hope it's not a spoiler alert to say a menopausal vampire.
That's right.
is who. Another thing about Viola, she loved the simple purpose of a job. Something that you're amazing at is setting a whole sort of visual opening, like a keyhole, and then ending it with an emotion like that. Like the paragraph just like lands on a feeling like that. I don't know. How do you manage your sentences? I don't even have a question. I'm like, you're amazing, you're amazing, you're amazing. But what specifically is your relationship to like the level of the line in the story?
Well, you and I are both not so secret poetry fans, right?
Not at all secret.
Not at all secret. Let's come out tonight as secret poetry fans. As
Here we
poetry
are.
fans. We love poetry. I love poetry. Vincent and I actually met 2 years ago at the Poetry Project Marathon, which is every New Year's Day. The best way to spend the first day of the year is at the Poetry Project Marathon. And I wrote poetry my whole life and hoped to be a poet until I was 25 and got rejected by every poetry program in America and some in Ireland. and I thought,
Some in Ireland. More than one in Ireland.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. All of them, in fact.
I no longer like the country for some reason.
Don't hold it against the country. They have very, very good taste. And I had only ever wanted to be a poet. And really, I couldn't ignore it after all of that rejection, that I just wasn't going to be. So I moved here to New York City thinking, okay, if I can't write poetry, then I want to at least be around writers. And that's when I found a writers group on Craigslist called the Blackout Brooklyn Writers Group, because it was right after the Brooklyn blackout, and they taught me how to write fiction. But since I was coming from poetry, I just had this natural love for the line. Perhaps I cling to it a little too fiercely because especially in the beginning, would get in my way. It would get in the way of plot. He would get in the way of character. And so I kind of had to loosen it up. Beautyland in this book was my attempt to loosen it, but even as you read it, I'm like, I didn't loosen it. I'm still such a stubborn
It's beautiful.
brat about the line. And so, yeah, it's just, the line has to be there for me. And so I read it out loud. I read everything out loud at least twice before I let anybody see it. And I think that hopefully that understanding is there, that concern with the idea of something being sonorous.
Yeah. I mean, speaking though of, I think that these things are mutually inclusive, right? The notion of rhythm and music, and the way that at least you unite character and setting, or to talk in terms of portraiture, like figure and ground. There are often these wonderful juxtapositions in your work. I can think of, without spoiling them, and they really work on the level of image. It's like an ailing mother and a tiger on the loose, or a dead father and a unicorn in the backyard. These things that seem like they are from almost competing realities that you decide, I think, in like this really musical, like this intuitive fashion to put together. I wonder just how you think about plot, maybe story on the one hand, and like images on the other, and how you decide what's supposed to live together in a story. Your stories seem like, to me, these grand like systems of cohabitation, things occupying the same space.
And a lot of juxtaposition too of unlikely bedfellows. But Professor Cunningham, can I first ask you a question? You said
You may.
figure and ground. Can you, I don't know what that means. Can you explain?
I mean, like,
love
sort of classically in portraiture, whether it's painting or photography. I love photographic portraits. They're kind of my favorite things to look at. It's the thing of, here's this person, be posed however, and then, you know, whether they've got a desk and all the books on the desk and the rings and the, I don't know, certificates of graduation, all the things that tell you who they're supposed to be or whatever their like stature, the ethos that they carry in the world. And I guess I think about art so much about like managing these things. They don't have to be human figures. They don't have to be settings that occur to us every day, but somehow putting one thing next to the other creates the sense of reality. And you do that so well.
And shows you who someone is.
Who someone is and the world that they inhabit.
Right.
Yeah. Or I guess like you could say like what's possible in the world that they inhabit.
Right, because it also tells you kind of what the rules are in the particular world.
Yeah.
It makes me think of how, as a writer, you have to decide what is in a character's space and what objects belong to them and how much those things show you who someone is. So I was a biographer of people with traumatic brain injury, and my job was to go to their homes and interview them and people in their lives and make a narrative of them, of showing their character in these 40-page life narratives for the attorneys who were representing them. And
when did you do this?
I did this, 15 years ago. I did it for a few years. That was my job, a biographer. And one of the things I did was I would go into their bathroom and look and make a list of objects in their bathroom and make a list of objects in their family room. And those objects told me so much about them. And perhaps that's why now I insist to my students that the objects have to be doing something in a story or a novel. And if they're not, to look at every object you've associated with a character and make sure it belongs there and it's doing something. So the figure, its environment, what it surrounds itself with, all are so important.
Yeah.
The objects of our lives tell us everything about us, what we need, what we want, what we don't yet have, what we long for. If I asked you all to overturn your pocketbook or your wallet or whatever, I'm sure there's something in there that I could use. In fact, let's just do it now. Just shake it on out and we'll just go through. Yeah. Vincent, do you want to empty your pockets?
I famously took everything out of my pockets before we got here. Remember, I was worried about my...
Smart. What's that?
This is my visitor pass to One World Trade Center where I was earlier today. A real clue into my life. My problem with junk, where I've been, my aversion to smiling in pictures, it's all there.
Oh, and there's a photo of you.
There is a reluctant photo. Yeah. That's so. That strikes me as so true and makes its way into the world not only of objects but of, especially in this book, animals. I want to talk to you just about animals. At the beginning, the first story in the collection has so many wonderful images, and one of them is one that I know that is true because I've experienced it myself, which is that there was once a crate of parakeets. And you can tell the story at the piers here in New York, and they got loose, and they live in various parts of Brooklyn and Queens. Can you talk about them?
That's right, yeah.
I know them. I'm on
You know
speaking
them?
terms with them.
You are?
They're in Flatbush, Brooklyn. And
That's right.
Yeah, I used to live there. I used to walk across Glenwood Avenue, and they'd be like up there, green and yellow, taunting.
Yes. So
Yes.
the lore goes, in the 1970s, there was a giant crate of monk parakeets. They look more like parrots, but they're called monk parakeets. And it was being unloaded, I think, at the Brooklyn Navy Yard, and it dropped. And this giant crate cracked, and all of the parakeets flew out and made their homes in the spires of Greenwood Cemetery and Brooklyn College and Flatbush, and just learned how to acclimate and live. Even though they were tropical birds, they were on their way to Argentina. They weren't supposed to be able to live here, but, you know, like a lot of people who come to New York City, transplants and immigrants, they adapted. They're strong, and they figured out what they needed to survive in this, you know, crazy place. That really captured my imagination, and I would run around the cemetery, Greenwood Cemetery, and see them flashing in the sky. And so they seem to work their way into my stories.
Another set of birds in your stories are also near and dear to my heart. I grew up near Morningside Heights, and the peacocks on the ground of St. John the Divine. How do you know when something real, whether historical, geographical, any set of facts, when do you know they belong in your story?
That's the question, right? So, have you seen Severance?
Oh, God, yes.
Oh, you did a podcast on Severance.
I'm a Severance head.
Me too. I'm a Severance head.
When I walk out of here, I won't remember doing this interview. That's how Vinson C is what they call me.
Well, yes, I know that you are a Severance head because Critics at Large, Vinson's amazing podcast, which I'm sure you all listen to, did a whole episode about it.
A smattering. That was a smattering.
This was...
I wasn't asking for more. No.
Give it up for Critics at Large. I am a huge fan of Critics at Large, and that's why I wanted to talk to Vinson, because I've been talking to him in my car for a couple years now and answering back. And so, but then when Vinson said he would do the event, I was like, oh my God, now I have to talk to this supremely intelligent man on stage. Why did I do this to myself? So super excited, also super nervous. But wait, what was the question I was answering?
You were like, Severance came up. How do you know when facts belong in the story?
Thank you. So you know when Mark S. or any of the information data, macro data refinement people are working with the little numbers, and when Mark S. is training Helly, he's like, you just eventually will get it. You'll know. You'll just have a feeling. I know this is going to sound like a cop-out answer, but I was like, that is exactly what it feels like when you just are hit by inspiration. You don't know why. You see the set of numbers that means nothing to you, but all of a sudden you realize that grouping them a certain way and putting them into a basket will lead to something important, even if you can't exactly articulate what or why. Yeah. That's kind of what you have to learn how to do when you're a writer, and you cultivate the ability to be able to know what data should be refined or how to refine data. And at the beginning, it's really clunky and you get it wrong a lot. And then, you know, book after book after book, you figure out how to do it a little bit better. But of course, you still get it wrong.
Yeah, in Severance, they define it as like, you know, feelings of fear and angst. And it's like almost a disgusting feeling. Yeah. And then you're like, this is when. For me, it does feel like that. It feels like, you know, like now I have to deal with this.
Now I have to deal with it.
Does that ring true as well?
Yeah, it's like falling in love.
Affectively, okay, yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
Because when you fall in love, or at least when I have, there's an oh no feeling.
Yeah.
Like, no, now I have to deal with you for the rest of my life, and I have to make room for you, and I just have to do it. That's like writing too. I don't know if have you ever woken up from a dream or or in the middle of the night and you're thinking of something and you know it'll be a good detail and you're like, God, now I have to get up and write this thing down and I just want to go back to sleep. Writing is like yourself knocking and you're just like, you again, great.
Do you work from dreams a lot? Do dreams make their way in?
I don't. Do you?
No, but mostly because I'm lazy. I think mostly because I often say, but no, I won't do that, and go back to sleep and then forget the thing.
In fact, I will not. Yeah. If it's important, it'll come to me in my waking life.
That's right.
Yeah.
Speaking, though, of the various emotions that accompany love, I do want to talk about love in these stories because my sense, and maybe it's because of names that you could recite like Updike, Cheever, on and on. My sense, one at least way to think about the American story is as a chronicle of alienated relationships. Mm-hmm. Relationships that are not working, that have all these like silences and voids, and somebody, the most strongly articulated emotion is like somebody, putting their hand down on their desk really hard, and that's the whole story or something.
Or like hating their commute.
That's right. Yeah. Like breaking a dish and bursting into like one tear. In your stories, though, love is so lividly expressed. People, whether it's a dead parent, a sick parent, parents worrying over the life of a child, or lovers getting into fights about you invited somebody into the car when I told you I wanted to drive home alone. Mm-hmm. Things that can only be kind of like this fine grain of real life love. I just want to know how you manage real affection in stories. It seems to be the most dangerous thing. Love, and it seems to me so easy, or relatively easy, to write antagonisms, and so much harder to talk about real affection, love, and everything that comes after it. How do you seem so devoted to that practice that I wonder whether you have a method for doing it.
Yeah. Well, why do you think it is that you're so scared of love, Vinson?
Well, my father was a distant man. No. No, he kind of was.
You don't have to answer that.
No, I mean, it's like, I think this is true in fiction. I think it's true, certainly in criticism. It's much easier to write a negative review than it is to write a deeply positive review.
Now we're getting to it.
To speak about happiness is to... I think happiness describes the true condition of the fiction that I want, which is that it describes the textures of everyday life. Mm-hmm. To say that I'm happy is like to kind of say like, and nothing happened, thank God.
That's right.
Or something like that, right?
That's right.
And to make that interesting. And even when the love in these stories is troubled, does have antagonisms and resentments built into it, it always seems to depend on this kind of liking between people.
Right.
Yeah. The story, the title story, Exit Zero, has a daughter and a father who haven't spoken in 3 years, and then the father dies. And even when she asks someone, did he ever say anything about me? And what the father has said is, she's stubborn just like me. Mm-hmm. That even behind the silence is affection, which I think is so hard to deal with.
I do, and I think that when you read an author many times, there's a base level of how fond they are or not, or are not, of the world and other humans. And I think that as a reader, you can pick up on that. And some authors who I don't enjoy reading, I will say, I'll think, well, why is it? What is it? Their lines are beautiful, their characters are beautiful, everybody loves them. Why don't I? And I'm like, I just feel like in that innate insight level, I feel like what they're saying is that human beings just generally do not like one another and are not likable. And I argue with that. Mm-hmm. In my work. My work argues with that idea. And it also, I think, argues with the idea that happiness reads white. Mm-hmm. That every happy family is all the same. I argue with that a little bit because I was told that it was impossible to write happiness and to write joy. And anytime I heard anything like that, I was very drawn to figuring out how you could do it and still make it interesting. Excuse me. Because when I first started writing, I wanted to write everything. I wanted to write everything that life could hold. And life holds happiness and joy sometimes. It's fleeting, but it's there. And so many novels that we studied left it out, as if the only thing, for example, two women could ever feel for each other was utter, bitter animosity, for example. And I know that that is not always true. And so why wouldn't there be love? Why wouldn't there be sex? Why wouldn't there be ambivalence about things that you're supposed to feel passionately about? Like, I just wanted to write truths that were closer to what I experience and to what I believe in. And that also, especially with Exit Zero, I think Exit Zero was the first book that I am really, really arguing with involuntary tics that we believe are true but aren't. I'll give you an example. In so many, this is what I tell my students, in so many books, the concierge, for example, defaults to being male. We just think of it, like when we're going to write a cab driver, a lot of us, like, our first instinct is to make the cab driver male. And I just am thinking, well, why? Have you ever had a female concierge? Yes. Have you ever had a female Lyft driver? Yes. So why is this an involuntary thing? And to look at what you are kind of involuntarily agreeing with without asking yourself, does this actually match what I see? And does this actually match my life? I just really, really wanted to look at that and to challenge it. Why does everybody think that we hate rain, for example? Rain can be such a blessing. I mean, there are so many places that need rain desperately. Rain is so important for our natural world, and yet the default is to hate rain. And so many times during the book, when rain occurs, people are happy about it, and rain is a good thing. Just that simple shift to say, no, not everyone feels the same way about darkness. Not everyone feels the same way about rain. Not everyone and then that makes hopefully a macro statement as well.
That's so beautifully said. Speaking of rain and its various effects, there is a story in here that I love, whose premise is that one day it's raining ex-boyfriends.
Yes. Ex-lovers.
Ex-lovers, that's right.
There's some women in there.
There are these lovers and their freckled chins are just hitting the concrete all over the place.
That's right. You've had those kind of days, right?
Oh yeah, why not? Yeah. This maybe speaks to tics and everyday speech and the way that kind of our involuntary habits of phrasing. I can imagine one potential genesis of a story like that being like, it's raining my exes. Like, to walk around Brooklyn is to have this happen to you sometimes.
Exactly.
And I live in fear. Today I was walking past a certain corner and I was like, God damn it, please don't rain right now.
Don't rain.
Thinking about this one person, yeah.
No rain.
Yeah. Can't walk on Clinton Avenue anymore, it turns out. I don't know. I just wonder what that transit is, and especially, this is my way of asking you about the broad category that we call speculative.
Oh, sure.
That things that are surreal or do not occur in everyday life seem to be tied very closely in your work to, in fact, reality. What is that transit like? What is that movement from the everyday to the flight of fancy for you?
It's essentially cutting out the middleman of simile and just saying, instead of this is like that, just saying this is that. So you're having that day in Brooklyn and you're walking down that avenue and it's like, oh my God, I'm seeing so many of my exes. It's like, and then in my process, I would be like, it's like what? What would that be? What is there a lot of? What is immersive and like you can't get rid of? Would it be like, and then I would go through different images and then I would be like, oh, it's like rain. Well, what would it be like if it were actually raining if like your exes were precipitation, and then I write through the image of that, and I write around the idea of rain and swells and showers, and there's like a lull in the rain in the story. This is the story Edna in Rain, and I write around, and I see if there's anything useful in writing around that image as well to use, and it's just great fun, and it's essentially getting to some kind of emotional truth in a very, to me, very direct, though I understand that not everyone feels that way. But to me, that's a very direct thing. That's just kind of, that's just mapped out in my brain at this point to move in that way.
Yeah. Speaking of just the way reality plays at the edges of your work, I would love to, because I read this recently, hear you talk about the cover image. I love this cover.
Oh.
The image on the cover of your book.
Yes.
Where it comes from.
Okay. And this is being taped, so there are only a few things. I can't say everything. I'll tell you why later. But so this is from the New York State exhibit at the Museum of Natural History, and this is maybe you've seen it. It's a wall-sized mural of a New York State forest, and my partner and I played hooky one day, and we went there, and I absolutely fell in love with the New York State exhibit, and just go there and visit as much as I can. And so when it came time to find an image for Exit Zero, since Viola in Midwinter, the perimenopausal vampire, lives in the Catskills, I thought, oh, could we use this image? So the thing that I can't say is that I sent a photographer into the Museum of Natural History to illegally take a photo of that mural to see if I could use it in some way. I won't say his name, but he did that for me, and in such a lovely way.
He's
and so
on
I
the
have
run
this
as we
image.
speak.
I'm sorry?
He's on the run as we speak.
You cannot find him. And you never will. So he took this beautiful image, and we were able to use it to my utter delight. And so this is, to me, this is the forest where Viola lives.
Well, you grew up in Philadelphia, correct?
I did.
You do something that I admire always, which is...
I put the letter L at the end of words that end with W, like Saul.
No. Or put the two R's in the word water.
That's water.
Water? Oh, okay.
Two O's in the water.
Okay, but that is not, I was not about to do a Philly thing, so...
Oh, okay.
I also do not want to be in trouble, much like the photographer. I do not want to be on the run from the city of Philadelphia. Not where I was going.
Wise. Wise.
What you do, I think uniquely for a city person, is talk about the natural very well. Grasses and flowers, trees. That aspect of the world makes it into your work very much. And I wondered if that was also connected to your infatuation with this image.
1,000,000%. Did you grow up in a city?
I grew up in New York, yeah. Oh. And so, like, I could tell you all about concrete, but I can't do trees.
Okay.
Yeah, stoplights, etc.
I will come to you when I want a 2-page description of a stoplight. I think I grew up in Northeast Philadelphia, and I grew up next to a park called Pennypack Park, which is this really, really long park and forest. And I don't know, maybe when it's rarer, you notice it more. Maybe it was kind of tapped into my brain by my mom, who is a master gardener and judged the city gardens contest and, had her little city garden. And then I don't know. I think that the natural world has just always been my favorite world to live in, quite honestly. Dogs, animals, nature, flowers, they're all in here. And it's a way of ordering, too. So a garden is a way of ordering, a way of saying, I want this, and I do not want this, and I will weed this out. And I think that as editors and as writers, we do the same thing. So what makes it into our work is what is significant to us. And I think that's a way of ordering, too.
with our last 5 minutes or so, I want to zoom out a little bit. I think the name of this event is like something, and the art of the short story.
Right.
So I would like to sort of
Let's talk about it.
address that grand topic as well.
The last question, define the art of the short story.
No, I am interested, though, in the transmission of the short story, at least in America, right? From one generation to another. Among many other things, you are a teacher. And I wonder how pedagogy plays a part in your practice, how teaching the story has reinforced your sense of its history, what it continues to be good for today. And I'm also just interested in how young people, where it lives in their lives, as opposed to the novel, as opposed to the magazine article, as opposed to the God knows what else, TikTok, et cetera. Just where does it, how do you see your students apprehending it and taking to it?
Because that is what it is right now, isn't it? Like, they're all telling their stories through TikTok and Instagram, right? So the story form bends and changes and refracts, but it really is, we're all just trying to tell someone, hey, this is what I'm going through, this is what I've been through. And I think whatever form it takes, it's significant, it's important. It gets us by, it gets us to the next moment, hopefully, when we're going through a hard time. But I think about the teacher who kind of exploded everything for me in college, Dr. Crystal Lucky at Villanova, who up until that point I had studied nothing but, with all due respect to them, Cheever and Nathaniel Hawthorne and Washington Irving, the inventors of the American short story. And those were fine, but I was never going to find anything there that would make me feel like I had a place at that table as far as writing them went. And then during college, Dr. Lucky came to Villanova, and she taught the African American short story. And first, she had a line out the door for that class. Like, we were just so hungry for something outside the quote-unquote American canon at that time. And she taught us the story of Toni Morrison, Recitative, which until somewhat recently was the only short story that Toni Morrison had published. And she just showed us that the table was bigger than we were being told. And that's when I realized that maybe I could also have something to say. So I wrote a bunch of really, really awful short stories because I was going to be a poet. That was my real job. And I was going to fall back on short stories, Very wise.
That's an American pastime, by the way.
That's an American pastime.
Short stories as plan B is...
That's how much I knew about the world. Yeah, we'll fall back on short stories. But I think that now, the greatest gift I've ever received are the people who gave me contemporary living writers to read. The people who are living now. I think as a student of writing, that's what you need. And so when I went to get my MFA at Brooklyn College, I was given contemporary short story writers and who were just using language and characters and references that I could get down with. And that is the first time I thought, oh, maybe I have something to say in this form. So that's what I do now, hopefully, for my students. I give them writers who are writing now about our times, and it just makes the table bigger. And that's what I'm trying to do. So the story, okay, with one caveat, and it's a big caveat. I don't know that every editor of every magazine feels that the table can get bigger. And there are gatekeepers, and there have always been gatekeepers, who would prefer that the story stays a certain way. And so every so often, I've been rejected more. I'm getting rejected as we speak at this moment, I'm sure, in my email. I mean, each story in this book was rejected several times. Each story in my first collection, Save As Houses, was rejected even more. And so, I believe that the table should get bigger and bigger with speculative, with all sorts of different genres and identities. And that's what I'm trying to be a part of, but I need all of your help. We ride tonight. This is happening. I need your help too. So I wouldn't say that I'm teaching so much as I am training the next generation to make the table bigger, too.
That's wonderful. And a rousing way to move on to audience questions. So I believe that someone is going to be going around with a microphone. I think I was told that. I was in there, that person is. So I guess raise your hand and then we can direct. There's one right here.
Hi, this question is for both of you, and sorry, it's mainly more about novels, but when you're embarking in something that I imagine spans many, many years, and as your person change, do you find yourself, when you're sitting back down to work on that project, tapping back into the person who started it, or is it change? Are you coming as you are, and does that derail you? And if not, how do you use it?
Oh, that's a good question. Oh, would you really think, yeah.
Oh, yes. A novel is, I think, a useful way to track. I don't know how you feel about this. Track yourself over time, because you're creating an illusion of simultaneity of sort of, here is one artifact, here is one artistic object that is in fact a record of various attempts, such that by the end of writing it, there's you can remember the paragraph becomes this palimpsest of like, I wrote this sentence 5 years ago, and this one right before I finally gave up. And so it's like this grand illusion. And to me, at least, that's a way of marking time. It's like, I've never been a good diary keeper, but my novel became a way of remembering all the things I was thinking about over those years. Is that how you feel?
Oh my gosh, I think the same thing. I've said pretty much exactly that. And in addition, I don't have tattoos, but I feel like my stories and my novels are my tattoos. They're indelible marks of where I was at a certain developmental state. And I'll just add that you write something, you put it down, hopefully for a little bit, you grow back in a way of speaking, you return to it, and it's not that the work gets better, it's that you get better at seeing it. And so time is such a necessary ingredient, especially when you're writing a novel. I read once that a necessary ingredient for a forest is time, and I immediately thought, oh, a novel as well. A novel is a forest in that way. Yeah, natural world again. Vincent, I have a question for you I forgot that I wanted to ask. And then you all think of more questions while I ask, but I had one question that I've been dying to ask you. Okay. So you are a critic.
Yes.
And last year, Vincent published his debut novel, Great Expectations, The Marvelous and Wonderful Great Expectations. Finalist for the John Leonard Award of the NBCC. Is that the right?
Yeah, last time we saw each other, we were both dressed up at the NBCC Awards.
With nowhere to go.
Nowhere to go, but some very thin seat.
That's what we did. My question is your relationship to critique or being a critic different now that you have written and gone through the publication process of a debut novel?
I'm not sure yet. I hope. There are a couple of people walking around the streets of this city that probably disagree, but I think I always tried to be very humane and cognizant of just the amount of work that any artistic effort takes. Most of my criticism that anybody has read in The New Yorker was written concurrent with my attempt to write this novel, and therefore I was always like abjectly failing as I was judging other people's attempts. So I'm not sure yet, because I still feel like I'm like a tornado just spit me out. Yeah. But I hope that this time will redeem even those former efforts in my mind.
Oh, yeah.
I hope so.
Well, it sounds like you were humane all the way through.
I don't know, that's just the kind of guy I am.
That's interesting, though, because I started writing criticism the past couple years, and I think I'm actually harder on
Why?
writers because I know the choices they have to make a little, and I think like, you took an easy way out there. Like, I know that easy way out. I've taken that easy way out. So that's something that I have to keep in check. Like, no,
Yeah. Do you enjoy it, writing criticism?
I do. I didn't think I would ever do it, but I wanted there to be somebody writing about speculative who really understands what it is, because sometimes that's not always the case. I've found. So I do.
Yeah.
But it's a different animal.
Now, criticism. Now, there is a plan B. Criticism. That's a fallback.
That's right.
Anyone else? Here's one, and then I see two up here.
Hi, when you were just talking about authors kind of picking the easy way out, I thought of your lecture that's online on revision as an act of autonomy. Yeah. And I think when listening to that, it kind of was a counterpoint of taking the easy way out, because I was like, gosh, like I have to make choices at every sentence, like that's hard. So I guess, what is the easy way out, and what do you think is the right level of autonomy to be like exercising while writing a novel or a short story collection?
Wow, that's amazing. So the reference point is a lecture that I've given that I think you can find online called Revision as an Act of Autonomy. And the question is, what is the easy way out? And what is the right amount of autonomy for, wow, two easy ones. What is the easy way out? That requires you getting a sense of what your particular easy way out is. For me, it's relying too much on the joke, for example. So I always want to make sure that I am not going for the joke when I should be going for the emotion, the real feeling and the real emotion that's in the pocket of the joke. I used to make that mistake an awful lot. That would be one of my easy ways out. What else are my easy ways out? It's lovely to have a writer's group and trusted readers who know when you're trying to get away with something. I rely on them so much. But yeah, I have a lot of them, and that's part of what you're trying to cultivate too, your ability to know what you're trying to get away with and to say, no, not today. Not today. You're not going for the joke today, Marie. You're going to write through that feeling and emotion, see if there's something important there. And what's the right amount of autonomy? I don't know. All of it? Most of it? Whatever. So on the severed floor of Lumen Industries, they see the numbers. It's just like you have to get the spidey sense, and it takes a long time to figure it out. That's the best I can do, but thank you for that beautiful question. I think there was a question up here.
This, right here.
Thanks. Hi. I was wondering, how do you think getting to the truth of a story is different in a short story versus a novel? Thanks.
Well, you have to get there faster. Sorry, that sounds like I'm joking, but you do have to get there faster. Like, a story is like a small house. I've always I grew up in a very small house. I live in a small apartment now, and kind of everything in it has to have more than one function. And stories work with that sense of economy, concision, and double, triple, quadruple work too. And so that's why it's more difficult for me to justify why something can make a good short story than it is why something would make a good novel. In a way, novels are more forgiving because there's more space. In a big house where there are rooms that you could even forget about, you have more room to mess around and try things out. And I think that you should in a novel. That's what's one of the many things that's fun about writing a novel. But in a story, it's one room. You can see the whole thing from the doorway. And so everything has to make sense, and everything has to not only pull its weight, but more. Yeah, for the sake of brevity, haha, pun intended, I'll stop there. But it's a big subject, but that's, yeah.
We've got one here.
Hi, could you share a really great prompt that you have used with students that has generated
We were going to
Good
talk
work.
about that. Yeah, great prompts. Oh, yay.
There's
Oh,
a couple
thank
right
you.
here.
Do you have one?
You say first, but I'll say some of the ones that I wrote down.
Okay.
Because if you don't know, Marie, you do this very generous thing, which is you share your prompts on Instagram and you archive them.
What?
We're talking to beneficiaries of the prompts, they know. Here's some ones that I like. Write a dream, write a party. Make a list of 10 kinds of rain, 10 objects of rain, 10 scents of rain. And then a recent one that I really loved was write a friend group that is smug and famous to themselves. So good. So good. But I'm sure you have other favorites.
Well, of course, they all just flew out of my mind, but they're all on my Instagram. I have it a highlight. A former student, Vanessa Chan, told me, you have to keep them on a highlight so people can access them. And she actually has said that one of my prompts helped her write her novel, which is amazing. And that prompt was write a story in reverse chronological order, which is tough and a challenge. Can I just share why I do that? A couple years ago, I started teaching at Yale. It was the first time I was hired full-time after over a decade, years and years and years of teaching as an adjunct where I hadn't had health insurance. And so Yale was the first school that gave me health insurance, which is not a small deal. And if anyone had asked me what school would be the first one to give me health insurance, I would never have said Yale. I had no connection with the Ivy League. I was shocked that Yale hired me, and it's been a blessing to be there, and I love those students very much. And I know that, many people don't have access to those institutions. Many people don't have access to colleges. Many people don't have access to the New York literary world. And so I decided to start posting my prompts so that everybody had access. Anybody who has access to Instagram and knows who I am. So very few people, but
An ever-growing set of people. A widening cohort.
I would make the joke, like, the three people who are my mother and who are on my Instagram have access to the prompts. But I have noticed that people have mentioned those prompts to me, and so I'm so happy that they're finding people, and I'm going to keep doing it as long as I can. So thank you.
Got time for one more question.
Okay,
one more. Or did we just knock it out of the park? So are the prompts the right place?
I've stumped them.
Here we go.
Oh, I see. This is a whole row of my former students.
Hello.
What's up, New School?
We're not creepy at all.
New School! New School in the house.
I'm just curious, what's the most fun you've ever had writing a short story?
Kate Tooley, what is the most fun I've ever had writing a short story? I think times when I've made myself laugh. I mean, that's such a, it doesn't happen often. It would be conceited if it happened all the time. It very, very rarely happens because I'm thinking so hard. Yeah. But when I have made myself laugh, are there any laughs in this book? I'm looking through potentially not. In this, are there? Maybe. Oh, okay. Exit Zero, the one where she finds the supernatural creature among her father's things after his death, contains a favorite line of mine just because it contains all the weirdness that I like. That probably seems very silly to some people. The line is, Joe and the unicorn drive to the Econo Lodge in silence. And when I wrote that line, I was like, nailed it, Bertino. Nailed it. Nailed it. And I Mick Jaggered around the room, and I was like, yes. And I think it's just because it has the supernatural in it. But it's not the fact that there's a unicorn in the car. It's the fact that they're in silence. That they're mad at each other. And so I don't know, I was like, that's a crystallization of something I'm trying to do, though I don't quite know exactly what.
Well, I'm sorry to tell you, but you did nail it, Bertino. Thank you.
Thanks, Vincent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vincent. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. What a beautiful Marie-Helene, Vinson. Thank you for this beautiful conversation. Hope everybody's got their book. We've got some for sale. And we'll get Marie set up on the other side of the door for a little personalization line. And just thank you so much. You have been a favorite since we accidentally sat next to one another about in my first week on the job. So it's a real honor to have you on the stage tonight for this book.